Oh, they're still moving. I thought they were moving to a music. I think the kids have come back. Everybody's dropping off.
Hey everyone, very good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Dan, I'm the Chief Experience Officer for Dreamplex here in Vietnam. And we're very excited to be sharing with you today this webinar that is organized by AIA and Dreamplex with the speakers that you can see here on the screen. So before we get started, I just wanted to send a big thank you to AIA for their support in putting this together. I'm sure everyone who's joining from Vietnam knows that AIA is a much more progressive company than probably you would normally think of. I've really gotten to know them as a purpose-led organization where digitally minded people, passionate self-starters come together to make an impact. And that's not something you can say for all insurance companies. And they've been going on this like really big digital transformation over the last years. And so we thought it would be a great idea to organize a discussion between us here today to talk about innovation and the workplace. And this is the first out of 3 sessions that we will be organizing. I'll tell you a little bit about the other sessions in just a few minutes. So thank you again, AIA, who are supporting us on bringing these great panelists together today. And AIA and Dreamplex have a very shared mission, which is why we came together for this series. So as probably most of you know, AIA really focuses on supporting people through their products and services with living healthier, longer and better lives. And Dreamplex focuses on delivering a better day at work. So we know that for a lot of companies, and we have a lot of business owners, HR leaders on this call, we know that for a lot of companies, it's a struggle to hire the best people, to engage them, to keep them with you. It's a very competitive job market. And so we're really here to partner with leading companies in Vietnam and beyond to create great places to come to work that help companies attract, engage, and retain the talent. So as I said, we call that a better day at work. It's not just the office, but really everything that happens within that space. And since we are here on this call, and since I'm representing Dreamplex, I would be amiss not to share with you 2 new locations that we're opening up this year. The first one being the On Office, which actually is designed by Tuan's team, Tuan, who is on the call today, which will have space for 800 people, which will be in District 2, very close to our current location that we launched in January and already almost sold out. So this office is it's called the On Office because it's the opposite of a normal office. It's the most unboring office in Vietnam, with a lot of ways to engage your team, your employees every single day. And a lot more about this coming soon. And then the second project we're launching this year, which is called The Warehouse in District 4, right across the bridge from District 1. So we call it secretly District 1.4. So this is an 1,800 person workspace. We converted 2 old warehouses into a new style office that is built around a really big central garden. So absolutely unique within Vietnam, within Saigon, to be able to live or work so close to the city center, but be in this huge green environment where it's all about well-being and sustainability. So that building is coming too. So in total, 2,500 workspaces for your teams that we're very excited to talk to you more in detail. But that's not why we're here. We're here to talk to these 3 amazing experts in their fields who join us today from District 1, because I'm in District 2, so I can say Tuan is joining from District 1. James is joining us from Hong Kong. And then Jessica is joining us from Singapore. What, sorry, James?
852.
Oh, there you go. So very well spread out over the region. And hopefully that will also mean that we get a lot of really interesting different perspectives in the discussion today. And again, the discussion today is about innovation and the workplace. So I wanted to welcome the 3 experts. But before I do that, just to let you know that we have a chat box and we have a Q&A button. So anytime during the discussion, if you haven't already submitted your question beforehand, if you have any question that comes up while you're watching us talk, then please either type it in the chat box or put it into the Q&A, and we'll make sure to address those questions either during the session or right after. But now, over to the 3 experts. I'm going to introduce them, and because they are so accomplished, I have to read their biographies. It would just be too much to memorize, especially for someone who's kind of losing his mind every single day. So I'm going to start with Tuan because he is geographically the closest and also left on the slide. So Tuan is the creative director and co-founder of Lab Saigon. Anyone joining from Vietnam will either know him or his company or the projects, or maybe all 3. And actually one of the projects that they worked on was with AIA on really rethinking their head office. And if that wasn't enough, they also worked with them to rethink about their sales offices, even for insurance agents that are in rural areas that are selling the AIA product. So you can just imagine how difficult of a design brief that must have been. They also thought about how do we redo the training centers, which is called AIA Exchange, and then the financial services cafe, which is called Nest, which I'm sure most of you have either seen or visited. So when you're thinking about innovation at work, clearly Tuan has a great reason to be here. He also served as the creative director on diverse design projects such as cocktail lounges. Now we're talking, especially given this time of the day, cocktail lounges. I think nightclubs recently. Office designs, exhibitions, factory showrooms, concept stores, music videos, and an annual national HIV awareness campaign. Unbelievable. And as Tan already put in the chat box, he also hosts the top-rated podcast MAD about the intersection of marketing, art, and design on Vietcetera. And then, if that wasn't enough, he also owns several food and beverage businesses in Saigon and Hanoi. So I think we may say that we're lucky that we catch him for 1 hour to talk to him, because that sounds like he has a very full agenda. So welcome, Tuan, to this webinar today.
Thank you, Dad. I couldn't have said that better. Thank you for doing that.
I don't know who wrote that bio, but it's right.
Very cool.
It's impressive. And then since I started on the left, I'm now going to go to the right, and I'm going to read Jessica's equally impressive, but somehow more compressed biography. Lot of humility there, or maybe just too much to write into the bio. So as I shared, Jessica is joining from Singapore today. She has 15 years of experience, must have started really young, in the design and workplace strategy industry. And currently, Jessica leads the workplace services within Sodexo Corporate Services APAC. She's also the studio lead for WX APAC, which is a consulting studio as part of Sodexo that consults companies on quantifying and improving their workplace experience. And we have one more introduction to go, but I have to already ask a quick question to Jessica. For people who don't know Sodexo, which may be very possible here, just here in Vietnam, because it's a very famous company, what do they do? So
thanks, Dan. You make me blush as well, saying that I'm very youthful.
James, get ready.
You're very kind. Particularly when you look at the picture that we've got of with my hair all spiked up, and then just get old mama over here. Anyway, so Sodexo. So Sodexo are I think we're the 19th largest employer in the world, and we're a global food and facility management company in Asia Pacific, where I think 60% of our work comes through facility management, and then the rest in food. So I think corporate catering is the bread and butter of the organization. Excuse the pun.
Yeah, you see, so that's where I thought I know you guys, but then I was looking it up and I watched a YouTube video which was all about workplace experience, and I was like, is this a different company? But okay, at least I got it right initially.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing. So with WX Studio, you're basically you're taking all that kind of like experience and knowledge and bringing it to clients.
Yeah, so WX is a corp-up. So we're a startup within the corporate of Sodexo. And so we act and behave a little bit different from, Sodexo is a big, solid, reliable corporate, which also can be a little bit hard to innovate. When you're a very big company. And so WX is our boutique consultancy within Sodexo, and we really bring that challenger mindset all around how we help our clients to quantify and improve their workplace experience. So it is really taking all of that kind of history of service, and then looking at, how can we think about challenging the norms around what workplace looks like today and what that experience design is.
Perfect. So also clearly very perfectly positioned to be joining here on the call. And thank you for joining us. I know you have 3 boys that I think you've sent out to the playground for the next hour. So thank you for organizing all of that and for joining in the conversation. And then last but not least, if you're on this webinar and you are running a workplace, or you're running a company, or you're in a senior HR function and you're managing maybe 300, 400, 500 people and all their office needs, then we're going to put this in context with James. James, I had to double check, heads the real estate team for WPP in Asia, which houses 30,000 people across 19 countries in the region. 30,000 people. That is a lot. Yeah, Tuan did a small applause there. James' team works with businesses in delivering new campuses. So WPP has really taken the direction of focusing on big campuses where all the WPP brands come together, and workplaces with the ongoing coordinated facility management. And he wrote, or someone wrote in his bio, that COVID has seen an acceleration of the pace of change and a renewed focus on agility, experience, and sustainability. And the team have embraced this challenge with open arms. James, how do you
Not
manage
blushing.
workplaces for 30,000 people? Yeah, sorry, no blushing.
I wrote it, one blush. A lot of juggling.
Sorry?
Can you hear me? A lot of juggling. You have to be.
Oh, okay. A lot of juggling. Yeah. Okay. So a few fires here and there. And it says here you're doing it across 19 countries. That's pretty much the entire region, no?
Yeah, that's right. New Zealand up to Japan and right across everything.
It's a bit hard to hear, James. No.
Oh,
Yeah, you were so present earlier, and
I
now.
know. That's terrible.
Okay. Well. Then let me ask the other two panelists first. So as everyone knows who is joining, panel discussions, webinars, discussion series, roundtables, a lot of the times there's a question or a topic on the poster, and then the 3 or 4 panelists take it into a completely different direction and start talking about what they want to talk about. So today we're going to try and prevent that by asking one question up front and one question in the back. The question up front, when we're talking about innovation in the workplace, what is innovation to you? And I know this is a slightly esoteric question, but we're going to pose it anyway. So maybe Tuan, do you want to kick off and share with us what is your idea of innovation when it comes to the workplace?
Sure. I think there's 2 thoughts about innovation for me. One is that it's not a specific point in time. It's more longer term. It's a process. It's a mindset. And when I say that, it means like people change, brands change. We're talking about AIA, right? They used to be the real life company, and then they switched to longer, healthier, better lives. And so the workplace that reflect that culture needs to kind of adapt with that brand also. So I think when it comes to innovation in the workplace, it helps if people think about it longer terms, think about it as a mindset, as a process that you're able to effect and change and iterate. So I think that's the kind of one top line idea that I would say about innovation. The other is, I'm going to steal kind of Jessica's note from yesterday, that it should be authentic. It should be authentic to your culture, to your company, and to your vision of what the company wants to do. It doesn't make sense to try to build a sustainable office thinking that's innovation when you're selling plastic stuff. It's not it's not authentic, it's not relevant, and I think it actually backfires, right? So I would say those 2 things. Innovation is a mindset, that it's a longer process that you can iterate. And the other being, it needs to be authentic to your culture, to your company, and your vision. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a mindset, not just a thing that you can do or that you can put someone's title as something innovation and that's it. It has to be like a total mindset. It is an ongoing process.
Yeah, it's definitely not a toy that you buy either. Yeah.
Right. You cannot just buy it from the outside. You really have to run it within the company.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's really interesting because Jessica was just talking about kind of like running a startup within a much larger company. So probably you can speak to that too, Jessica, in terms of what you're thinking about, innovation and work.
Yeah. Well, I think to build on what you guys have just said, in that you've got to think about innovation long term, and investing in creating, a new brand and a new agency inside of a larger organization that thinks quite differently is something that it will take time to mature. And so innovation isn't, you're not going to get the ROI immediately. But I think with innovation, I mean, the definition of what it could be is really around obviously a product or a service or a process change that's actually going to help you be more effective and more efficient at whatever it is that you're doing, so that you're only going to innovate to reap certain rewards. And that's what I think, to the point of what Tuan was saying, that it's got to be authentic. What are you trying to achieve by innovating? You're not just innovating because it's the latest fad or whatever. And the key thing to think about with innovation is often something new, but it doesn't need to be brand new in its entirety. It could be new to you. So that's really important, because particularly when we're working with our large clients and we're talking about their innovation programs and, you know, trying to bring them innovation, we actually have to be very clear about what the definition of innovation is to them. And one of the key things is always innovation is new to you. Innovation to you, not necessarily to your neighbor or to, you know, the tech company down the street.
That's really interesting, because I'm sure you have a lot of discussions where, you know, you get into a room and you say, we're going to kick off this like innovation kind of project, right? Or process. And then people's minds go to all kinds of crazy things where it's really more about, you have to focus on the business. You have to focus on what is really kind of like the objective of this specific kind of like innovation iteration, and then go towards that. And it doesn't mean you have to completely, you know, invent a new business. It can be something that maybe is done somewhere, but done by that company in a certain way. Okay. Really, really great. Yeah, really interesting. And then James, I know you found this question too esoteric. However, now that you already have two beautiful answers, anything you want to add, anything you want to build, your view on innovation?
Hopefully I've worked out my sound issues. Can you hear me okay?
It's perfect now. Yeah, no sign language required. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, look, I mean, our entire business is founded on innovation. It's an ideas creating digital communications business. So every day it's about innovating. But really for us, innovation is the people who are delivering it. So when I bring it back to the workplace, it's about creating workplaces that facilitate bringing the best out, getting the best talent, and then bringing the best out of them. And we're seeing lots of innovation, particularly since COVID's arisen around the world and the region, with different ways of using the office, different needs for the office. So it's abounding at the moment, which is fantastic.
And so, you know, kind of what I spoke about earlier, that, you know, at the end of the day, you know, companies are nothing but a group of people, right? And so as a creative agency, you know, media agency, you want to get, and we had Shankar from Mindshare on a panel last week, you know, as that kind of like, you know, team or company, you want to get the best people because they can create the best work, right? And then this can be a tool, right? So a lot of the times, maybe people see workplaces and offices. I spoke to a lot of kind of like business leaders who during COVID, like with pain in their heart, had to write that monthly rent check because they were paying for an office they didn't use. You know, it can feel like a cost or a burden, but what you're saying is that it can be seen more as like a strategic tool to get the end result that you're going for, which is basically to get the right people in, you know, get them into the right environment, that they're the best, you know, creatively, or the best, you know, think strategically, or from an innovation perspective, you still need that environment.
Yeah, we're using it differently and we're using it more efficiently in a lot of the places, but you'll always need it.
So then maybe another question about that, right? Because you are overseeing, again, you know, workplaces for 30,000 people in 19 countries. Do you see a difference in how things are developing in Vietnam versus maybe other markets in the region?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, every country is going through the challenges at a different pace. It's almost like we're on parallel lines, and some people are 5 stations ahead and others are just leaving. I mean, Vietnam is very lucky to be in a position where it's managed well, and it almost feels, from what I hear, that it's business as usual. And in some regards, that's a risk of being a missed opportunity, because I think there's a fabulous learnings and fabulous opportunity to come out of COVID and new ways of using the office and better ways. But yeah, we are definitely seeing, we've got people in India who have not been back in the office since it started and are not likely to be back for many months yet. In China, it's business as usual. So in Australia, it's a bit of a mix. In Hong Kong, we've been in, we've been out. Singapore is about to sort of wind back down. So every country is experiencing and managing it differently. Same problem, same challenge, but different answers.
Right. Yeah. It sounds like it. And is there something that, like, you know, you're saying some markets are kind of like 5 stages ahead or 5 stations ahead. Is there any kind of, you know, market that you would look to as the market where they're doing it, quote unquote, the right way, or which you would say is the best practice?
There's no globally right way for it. Even when we look at our business globally, there is no, hey, this is the way we're going to do it. Other than to say, if anybody in the past thought we have to have an office and a desk for everybody, that has well gone. As corporate real estate people, we've championed for over a decade, you can share, we can use space better and more collaboratively and more community-based. And there were excuses, culture, different working patterns, different home environments, different commutes. COVID has leveled the playing field. We can all work differently and remotely. We don't all have to be at the desk. Putting aside, hospitality and manufacturing and so on, but the general office roles, 99% can be more fluid. So there is no one answer because every country has got different challenges. But I am seeing probably surprisingly good pivots coming out of, say, Japan, which was a very different sort of presenteeism, be in the office, be at the desk, and they're really embracing it. I think we'll see the same out of India because they've had such a tough time. They've been out for so long that they can properly reset. Whereas I see Taiwan, China, Vietnam as potentially letting an opportunity to see change slip through. I'd really encourage people in those markets to look at how people are pivoting and take the best of it and to be able to do it without the same pressures.
Yeah.
So it's an opportunity that I think needs to be seized.
Yeah. I think a great point that even though business has kind of resumed as usual here in Vietnam, that we have to be aware of the fact that there are a lot of opportunities here to really reinvent and innovate the workplace and how people work and the spaces they work in. And that we shouldn't kind of like take for granted that, well, this has kind of like passed us by, so we don't have to do that kind of like reinvention. And I'm sure, Jessica, you speak to, people in different markets as well. Do you sort of see a difference between markets and maybe similar to James? Like, do you see sort of markets kind of like, as maybe an example, or there are some things to be learned that when, business leaders here in Vietnam are thinking about, how should I change my workplace? Should I change my workplace? That, we could apply some of those learnings.
Yeah, I think globally what we've seen is that Asia Pacific is, if you like, first in getting back to normal. Because exactly what James has said about, we've got countries that are going back and have managed it, quite well and are going back to what was the previous normal. But as he says, there's this kind of opportunity that if you don't take advantage of it, you could end up being left behind instead of leapfrogging with those that had to go through hardship to change, to do the change. The thing that I would sort of say is that the change management would be something that you would need to have a look at, because if you look at the countries like, say, India or Japan, because they are going through the more pressure and that they have to change and they've been out for so long, they have adjusted to a new normal. So if you're going to want to take advantage of these changes, which I really believe is imperative that you need to, you will need to think a little bit more about the change management and taking your people on that change journey, because they're not being forced to learn through life like these other countries are having to do. So I would think that is something very, very important to take note of. And then in terms of, who's more advanced in it, I think it's so different. Because of your own the own cultural norms, cultural challenges, the environment challenges, like we've talked about, the different countries and way that COVID's been managed. But in general, at the moment, APAC seems to be ahead, and the clients that I'm talking to, the way that they're responding is they're coming up with experiments, and then they're designing these experiments. Oh God, that sounds terrible. Pilots, but they essentially are, experimenting with new ways of working, and they're implementing them in smaller ways and not taking 18 months or 2 years to plan out a new way of working, a new workplace strategy. They're actually saying, okay, let's get together, let's do, a 5-week intensive, come up with something, and then we're going to run pilots for the next 6 months. We're going to have measurements and some KPIs around this. And then we're just going to see, does this work? Okay. Does it not? What's the feedback? And so I think that's the way to get to the future faster.
So pilots and not trying to think about this as this huge thing you have to do to innovate the workplace. You can just think about a couple of things that you you may have some like hypothesis around, what could work, what could innovate. Maybe they can be suggested by your team members, or by your workplace consultants. And then you could from there basically start kind of like piloting some of these things, see, set some KPIs at the beginning, see sort of like how these things are helping, and then going from there. And Tuan, kind of like listening to all of that, right? Like, as I wouldn't say my fellow Vietnamese, because I'm clearly not Vietnamese.
You get a
white
pass.
face. However, as my fellow person based in Vietnam, what do you think? Like, you're obviously very much like internationally exposed. I know you do some work outside of Vietnam as well. Do you see a difference in kind of like what your clients in Vietnam are asking versus what you're hearing from the experts here today?
I think, speaking about COVID and innovations in the workplace, I think it really depends on the kind of data that you were able to get during the lockdown in Vietnam. We were locked down for about 2 weeks compulsory, and then like another 2 weeks optional. Within that month, if you have proven that your team can, be productive without you being behind their back, go on and implement these innovations that you see, happening elsewhere. And if you haven't built that culture where trust was a thing and you can be productive without micromanagement, then you need to relook at your culture first before you implement any of these things, before you let everybody work from home, right? So I think it really depends what the companies got out of that 1 month working from home.
So basically, because the lockdown was so short, right? And I think this is what James was talking about. Have we in Vietnam sort of just said, oh, okay, so this passed us by, so there's no need to kind of like rethink these things, because we were at home for 2 weeks and then we just came back to work. Like, that's it, right?
Yeah.
So what do you feel? I mean, not only as a designer and, owner of a design company, but just, do you feel like we're kind of like letting a chance go by to rethink things?
For sure. I think we were lucky enough to be on the other side, the companies that are able to be productive without coming to the office. So I still think we should follow the leads of other countries that kind of got a chance to innovate. However, I still think in Vietnam, or at least to our company, an office is also very important. It's a source of pride for the guys who come here and sometimes take their families here, take pictures on Instagram. Like, it's still a thing that I think that I personally would still invest in. Maybe, I would tweak a little bit, like invest into more like telecommunication tools and have policies that allow working mothers to work from home and things like that. But I would still believe in an office as a physical space where our team gets together. Like you can have a long distance relationship, but it doesn't beat going on a date with a girlfriend, So I just thought of that.
Thanks for throwing in that analogy. Yeah. We're really like checking off all the sort of like cliches of panel discussions where we're talking about stuff that we talked about in the pre-interview. We're mentioning trends. We're doing bad analogies. I mean, we're on track. Okay. So we have a lot of questions that were submitted by the people who are attending. And one question that I wanted to direct to Jessica first, and others obviously feel free to build on it, is from Tom Nguyen, who is the Senior Learning and Development Executive at AIA. And Tom is asking, what is the link between innovative office design and effectiveness? So I know it was mentioned a little bit earlier, but is there a link between office design and how effective the people are? And I think when I hear effectiveness, I always kind of like want to say stop. Effectiveness, creativity, innovation, collaboration, right? Because I think these things also matter, not just like how much output people have, but is there a link between how offices are designed and those themes?
Yeah, absolutely. And so maybe if we take the word effectiveness and just say, what is the link between innovative office design and supporting people to do their best work, whatever that might actually be. The other thing that I would encourage when talking about this particular topic is to think more broadly. So often when we think about office design, we're thinking about the physical space, and that's very important. And it's obviously the one thing that we go to because it's quite tangible. But we need to think more broadly than that. And we need to think about, well, now, and the conversation is really about what is the work experience? What is that work-life continuum? What does it look like to support people to do their best work, whether they are a working mother, to your point, Tuan, or or if they're somebody that, you know, could work better at home when they're doing focused work as opposed to coming into the office, or, you know, there's a variety of different reasons. But I think when you want to know what the link between an innovative office design, you need to think more broadly. So it's about the space, it's about the services, and it's about the technology that and the ways of working and the policies that you've set up around your people to help them do their best work. And so what we're noticing is kind of 2 points. One is that a consistent experiential, people are wanting a consistent experiential office where employees and visitors want to come. And so this is exactly what Tuan was saying before. And that if the office's purpose is around engagement, say we do move to some future, you know, it's going to be different for every organization, but we do move to some future where the purpose of the office is for the engagement, but you can do your focus work or your individual work better at home. Then what we're finding is the definition then would be around creating a seamless interaction experience that's fueled by the right technologies that reduces friction. And therefore, you're going to be getting the effectiveness, or, you know, allowing people to do their best work. So you need these kind of different key ingredients to kind of come together. And I think this comes back to, you know, in the work that we do, we're designing for that experience first. And then we're figuring out what are the key moments that matter in a person's day, in a person's week, in their interactions, at both levels of looking at like task-orientated stuff, but also now looking at, you know, emotionally and, you know, community-wise, what do I need to get my work done? And that kind of softer element that hasn't previously been there. And actually looking at that throughout, you know, a day and throughout the weeks, to then map what are the key levers that are going to make of the experience that are going to make the difference to how someone can do their best work.
So practically, I really like that sort of that theme of, you know, doing your best work, right? So I remember that when Spotify announced their work from anywhere strategy, you know, they talked about work is not something you go to, it's something you do, right? And it really depends on the day, the mood, the specific task, the job you have to do, that, you know, there may be one environment better than another environment. And so what you're saying is that, you know, when people can work from anywhere, really kind of like the first thing you need to do is to rethink the role of the office, right? So what is the office really built for then? So people come into the office and kind of like, what kind of work are they going to do there? And therefore, is the space optimized for that kind of work? And then you also touched on, you know, this also goes into, and our next discussion is about people and culture. But you said this also goes into policies, right? So how do you make sure that people know, you know, what is expected of them and what is allowed and what is not allowed? You talked about technology and reducing friction. So again, it sounds like there's so many elements that have to come together to make that sort of like workplace experience work, whether that is at home or at an office or maybe a third space, a satellite office or something like that. So it's big, which obviously it's why we have people like you to advise clients on how to approach it. So yeah, really interesting. So another question that...
Sorry, I'd add to that because I'd actually written a sort of a note that seamless experience, copycat. Because it is, and that goes really a lot of it goes to the digital experience and making sure that the Wi-Fi and all the technology is seamless when you're in there. The physical side of it's all about creating a workplace that encourages the interaction so that people can interact with serendipity, but also fosters collaboration. And then at other times, be it the workplace policies or practices or the workplace itself, allows for concentration. So you have a range of typing work styles and needs and purposes, and it's got to have that mix, or your policies have to enable fluidity for that mix.
Yeah. And don't forget, I was just sorry, Tuan. I was just going to say, don't forget that you need the services around to activate that. So if you want to create coffee meetups, or you want to, you know, create these moments where you are in a way creating the environment that is conducive to bringing people together that would not normally come together, you need to activate that with services. So you can have the perfect environment and you can have the perfect technology and the perfect policy, but if you're not actually, you know, programming that, with services, then
that experience
to life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Tuan,
I just want to add
something. Yeah, because we've been talking about this a lot, right, Tuan? Like we're talking in terms of like this new location designing, in thinking about, it's not that we don't, care about the office or like the physical space per se, but in some ways it really is just like a vehicle, a vessel to bring to life what we're trying to do, which is really, this like experience that people want to be a part of, right? And that's for them then a reason to go into these spaces, and the space then helps deliver it. So Tuan, your build on that point.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make one quick side note to Tom's question. It's more like a practical observation of an innovative office and how that leads to effectiveness. I think an innovative office has a side effect of, it's like a marketing tool, right? You use that to recruit great talent to your innovative office, whatever that innovation is. And then those great talent, that talent density allows you to be more effective. So I think just by a byproduct of having an innovative office, you get to be more effective. And that's more like a layman's, observation of innovation. And I think,
Yeah, very, very, very interesting. And so then thinking about sort of that, that physical environment, James, there was another question that came in, which I think is a question that we all like to talk about. This is from Phuc Nguyen, who is the marketing director. I was going to say the CMO, maybe in the future, Phuc, but he's the marketing director for Growth HR. And he is asking, there's a rising concern about the open office plan. So when you're talking about, collaboration, when you're talking about, people working together, innovation, there is sort of like, that's the whole reason, I think, besides cost cutting, but that was the whole idea of like open office plans, because you run into people more, there's more serendipity, there's more kind of like cross-pollination between teams that otherwise would be sitting in these individual siloed offices. So we threw everything out into the open, and then it turns out open offices also have their downsides. Let's just keep it at that. So Phuc is basically saying, is the open plan office dead? And if so, what's the alternative?
It's an unfortunate term, the open plan office, and it's made its way into some of the Google searches for, the death of the open plan. It's an element of the office, having openness. You get to absorb seamlessly your peers and your seniors talking, and so you can get some learning by osmosis if you have it. But on the flip side, you can get seriously distracted. So there is a balance. It needs to be mixed in. It's not all open plan, never has been. Going to open plan was really about saying you don't need a status-based office, which has corner offices and so on. It was more delivered as a breakaway from that, but it's got a life of its own. And so there's the people who like the status and the people who don't like open plan. It was really a means to an end, but it's not the right end. It's just part of it.
So as someone who has worked in one of your agencies, I know that, there's people there who have worked there for a long time. And that also means that people do want to have a certain status, and they maybe do kind of cherish, no one that we know, but let's just say, right, theoretically, there are some people who may like that sort of status symbol of having that, one office, even though there's mostly open space, but then they still have that one office. We've seen, I just visited the AIA head office maybe like 2 weeks ago. Like, again, they've very purposely done away with that. Everything is basically open space. And then there's people sitting in spaces that may be construed as an office, but they're basically meeting rooms or meeting spaces that people occupy frequently. Let's just say it like that. So that idea of a statusless office, like I love that idea. Does it work? Basically,
I have 100% conviction that it can work, and it's the absolute right way to go. There is no room for a status-based office. It is inefficient. It keeps the most knowledgeable people locked up in their silos, protecting their information and not sharing it with everybody. It's inefficient. It's dinosaur-like, but I get it that people struggle because it requires change. But I will argue until the death that it is the better way to go. And I will encourage people to make that change, as rough and as tumble as it is. And if I'm like Jessica, I'll get change management wrapped around it and we'll cuddle them on the way to change. But it is the right thing to do. And generally, we've done this in a lot of places for 10 years, and we've had arguments and resistance. I cannot think of somebody who's actually said, I should never have done that. I've got to go back. There'll be reluctance and changes and so on, but they generally get used to it. And the senior people will often be on record for saying, should have done this a long time ago. This is much better.
Yeah, the same people who protested it in the first place, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So
Well,
maybe that, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, this whole conversation is about innovation, and to exactly what James just said, if you get your senior leadership out of offices, out of cabins, to a place where the young people coming into your organization can learn from them, and let's face it, the old fogies can learn from the young ones too, particularly when it comes to technology and the changing world, and that drives your innovation. So if you've got people in silos and locked up, you're not going to be able to unlock and access that innovation.
Yeah, so interesting, right? So this is actually the conversation we had with Carr, who was on a panel about Gen Z in the workplace. And he was basically saying this, that he's sitting out in the open. So the CEO of Mindshare Vietnam is sitting out in the open. And he says this allows people to kind of like truly believe that this organization is not so much about hierarchy, and people feel kind of like free to go up to him. But he made that same point, James, that he feels like he's learning more from those people than the other way around, because he now gets to sit with people that are actually probably more like the target audience that a lot of the advertisers are going after. So in that case, it's a very clear benefit.
Kudos. I mean, it was probably 8 years ago, I think, that we actually took the Group M businesses to open plan agile work. Also, see, I just fell for it as well. It was agile, not open plan. Because it had lots of meeting rooms and lots of huddle places and lots of closed environments for the concentration work. But it was an agile environment. And see, it's not open plan, it's agile.
Agile, yeah. And I think that point about concentration is also a very important one, right? Like in some of these discussions, it sounds like, the office needs to become a place where people come and collaborate and socialize. So you need that cafe space, you need that sort of like open floor plan. But at the same time, we cannot forget that people also need to get work done. And there need to be kind of like that variety of seating and working styles where someone may be in that social area, but it's also very easy to touch down and go into more of like a closed off environment where, they can really do some focused work or have that Zoom call as we're doing right now. So, this wouldn't work if I would be sitting in the cafe downstairs. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of different things that need to be done right. It's kind of interesting how a lot of this actually moves away from the design and build side and goes more into, it's about culture, it's about change management, it's about people's mindsets, right? But there are a lot of things that it sounds like people need to get right to really build that innovative workplace. So the question that in every single discussion we run in Vietnam comes up eventually. So I'm going to just ask it before an audience member types it into the box. Who is going to pay for that? And maybe, the step before that, does it cost more money to run an innovative workplace versus a non-innovative workplace? Tuan, money.
I don't think so. I mean, we don't have a lot of budget for ourselves. And so, we try to build an innovative office for our team culture that are authentic to our culture. I don't think it costs a lot of money. It costs us $50,000 to do this. That's cheap.
And what is something that is in that space that I would completely agree is like a very kind of like innovative space, and you can see sort of like all those different like functions that the space has. What is an example of something that you've built within that 50K budget that, brings that innovation? Like what is something that someone could introduce into their office without breaking the bank?
Sure, it could be something very small. Like for example, you don't need to buy an existing screen system, right? We have like floor to ceiling windows, 180, but wrapping around it is a plant system that we got from the local nursery. We're able to nurture this urban plant, and it serves as a screen, and it like costs us less than a screen system, right? So that's one thing where we can be very frugal. Post-COVID,
does that drive innovation?
The guys can work better. It's cooler. They go outside to grab coffee, to smoke a cigarette. I think it does, especially for what we do.
So it adds to that sort of theme that we were talking about earlier, that the office needs to become a place people want to go to, not have to go to because their boss is telling them, where are you? Right? And Vietnam is very much like a butts in seat kind of culture. So when you have to make it something attractive, when you have to build that experience, these things matter.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one example, right? Another example is post-COVID. We try to do things hands-free. So we incorporated these like hands-free mechanisms to open our doors, to squeeze the soap, to work the faucet, to even flush the toilet. Everything is using your foot, and that thing didn't cost us much money at all. But at least it communicates to the team that if there's an issue, then you can design a solution for it.
Yeah. Okay. James, how about you? Anything that, like, what would you say? Is this going to cost a lot of money? Is it expensive to build an innovative office?
Well, if you've already got an innovative office and then you're responding to, say, COVID and as Tuan mentions, going touchless or introducing an experience app to create more social events, the payback is there in what you're giving the staff in terms of building safety or more experience. But for the general offices, where still a large majority of many markets are quite traditional desk per person style of models, whether it's open plan or a mixture of offices and so on, the maths are very simple. We have 100 people and 100 desks. If we can turn that on its head and say we only need 60 desks for people, we don't need to chop off 40 and say that's saving. We might actually give back 20 of the 40 we save, give back 20 and repurpose it into other areas. We may spend more in the investment in the space and still make some savings. So it's a reapportionment of your investment, because doing the old style status is incredibly inefficient.
Yes.
It's very rigid and the statuses change. And so you're always building new walls and moving walls for those changes. Whereas an organic environment that is less status and more community-based, far more responsive to the daily changes of team setups and so on. So you don't need to invest in that. You just invest a lot more at the outset. So we find we invest much more in the agile new workplaces, and part of doing campuses is investing much more because we've got more scale, so we get deeper value, we take longer investments, so we've got a smoother appreciation period. So a much bigger experience investment for staff, yet the annual cost is less.
Right. And then you were saying about, I think there was an interview with Michelle Snyder, the SVP of Workplace for Salesforce, and she was talking about the same kind of notion that, they run obviously also a lot of like big campuses, right? They call them towers, Salesforce Tower here. And they also came back with that same kind of finding after studying some markets that were reopening, that in the end, they're actually not like spending more for these new collaboration hubs. They're just kind of like taking the existing floor prints, and instead of kind of like having 100 desks, they may go to 60 desks, which then opens up the space for more of these kind of like collaboration spaces. And it doesn't all have to be, I think, one of the things that we're hearing a lot, that people have this assumption that, if we're talking about innovation, that means we have to, chuck the office full with technology, right? So it's all, innovation is about, removing the fingerprint scanner and putting like facial ID in there and like huge digital screens everywhere and all that. But everything we've been talking about so far is about, what would excite people to come to the office and then sit down and meet people that otherwise wouldn't meet, and maybe have a discussion and have space to kind of like do a collaboration session, which again, really doesn't have to cost all that much.
And that's coming back to where COVID has given the world this great opportunity. I mean, globally, and I do have a bit of insight as to what's happening in the Americas and Europe, the quantum of space and rent that can be saved in corporations globally is absolutely extraordinary. I mean, there's a bit of talk going to the extremes, but we're talking 30, 40% of real estate spends being chopped.
Yeah.
So that's a massive saving, and then hence a massive opportunity to reinvest in innovative elements, which if you haven't gone through that hugely painful experience, you're missing the opportunity, or you have to work harder to access it.
Exactly. How about for you, Jessica? What's your view on the cost side of things?
Yeah, well, I think, exactly to the point that James was just making, in that if you are in a traditional environment and you have the opportunity to move to a new environment, and that you have the opportunity in that, as he's saying, it could be 30 or 40% of downsizing of the office, and then redefining what the purpose of the office is.
Right.
When you need to start thinking about employees and their work-life continuum, that it's not just about supporting them in the office. You know, it could be you need to support them in third places to do their work there, or at home, or you know, the work realm has grown at now, and so the purse spend that used to belong to real estate for, you know, that entire tower, and they would have taken and said, okay, well, I can do 30 or 40%. Oh, yay, that's savings. You know, that's great. I could put that in my pocket. And then you'd be saving that on the FM as well, right? Because you don't have as much asset to be managing.
Great, yeah.
But you know, that's what the traditional total cost of occupancy would look like. But now you actually need to take that, and not only are you using that same money to reinvest in better space in a smaller way, in a smaller capacity, you actually need to think about what are the services and what are the provisions that I need to give my employees to do their best work when they are not in the office. So, and the people making the decision around that, you know, it used to be just real estate, and then it would be FM, you know, to make more savings, etc. But there's a whole host of people that need to be part of this conversation: HR, procurement, IT, you know, all of these different stakeholders. And what we're seeing, the most prevalent thing I'm seeing with all of the global corporations we're working with, is they're putting together task forces to figure out what to do next and how to spend that money in the most appropriate way. And this is what I was talking before, the key moments that matter. We're not looking at trying to give everything what our neighbors got, or the person down the street, oh, this is the latest innovation. It's really about authenticity. So coming back to that, what's important to your organization, what's important to your people to help them get their best work done. What are the key moments that matter? And let's invest there. It might be in the office, it might be beyond the office, but whatever's going to be the right thing for us to do.
Yeah, totally. So it sounds like, you know, net, no, we don't have to invest more, or it doesn't have to cost more. There may be some upfront costs in sort of like reconfiguring existing offices or maybe going into a new environment, but the eventual monthly cost will actually be lower. And plus, again, if we're investing in places that people want to go to, it can be a great recruitment tool. It can be a great engagement tool, right? It will add to, you know, how long people want to stay with the company. So there's almost only benefits. So I know we're getting close to the end of the hour, and if anyone from the audience still has a question, feel free to put it in. But maybe before that drips in, you know, maybe as a final question, is there any one kind of key takeaway that you would want to share with the people on the call? And again, you know, these are business leaders, HR leaders, maybe people who are kind of like struggling with that question of like, what do I do with my office now? Any kind of like wise words you want to leave us with, maybe starting with James?
Thank you. Well, I would say, given our audience is Vietnam and you've dodged the COVID bullet, still seize the opportunity to try and push for change and see what the rest of the world's doing. And what you guys, Dreamplex, are rolling out is spot on the money in terms of more experienced, focused workplaces. So look at those ideas and steal some of them. And I would say, don't believe the resistance. So when people tell you, hey, we're different, so it's different for us, we can't do it, don't believe that. Have the conviction. It is much better environment. So push for a more experienced, more sharing community style environment. Conviction on that.
Okay. So even though we may have bypassed, I mean, I want to say, like, it sounds like we're jinxing it, but bypass COVID, still seize the opportunity, focus on experience, and don't believe that we're different, right? So there's always that argument in, well, that wouldn't work here because, and that's always the first step towards basically not taking advantage of these kind of like moments.
Yep.
Great. I think very helpful. Jessica, your final words of wisdom.
Well, I'm probably going to, I have a feeling I'm going to steal what Tuan's going to say. But
No.
But authenticity, you know, design that experience for you and for your company, what your business needs and what your people need to get their best work done. Focus on those key moments that matter and design some experiments and just fail fast and learn and get feedback and take people on that journey.
Yeah, yeah. Just get going, right? I think again, like innovation sometimes feels like we have to do all these like huge things, but maybe just get going with something, right? And get sort of like these pilots, fail fast, like you said, get some experience, and then go on from there.
And make sure
Really good.
you're doing it with all of the right stakeholders, that you put together a
Yeah,
task force,
yeah,
because you
yeah,
need you all need to figure it out together. It's
yeah.
not the real estate domain, it's not the facilities domain, it's not HR's domain. You need to work together to come up with what that solution is.
Probably more than at any time before. This is now really becoming everyone's job, right? So all of a sudden, you know, it isn't just kind of like again, like a facilities question. It isn't just like a functional thing we have to check off. We need an office. You know, it needs to have all these elements. So task force, yes, that's another keyword that came out of that. Before I go to Tuan, I'll just read Simone's comment, who said, so Simone is from Savills in Vietnam, and he said, better offices. Better offices also means that employees want to stay longer in the space. Nobody discusses this enough. Very true. Why would you want to leave when you're sitting in a great space, right? Especially if there's a little bar somewhere near or on the premises, as some of the things Tuan and I are working on. Okay, Tuan, over to your words of wisdom.
Yeah, so my experience is coming from, you know, people coming to me asking us to design a space that is innovative. But for us, it's helpful not to think of an office as an interior design project, because it's not only that. It needs to be something bigger, it's more holistic, it's a process that takes a bit longer. Is your HR actually invested into this initiative? Are they going to activate the space and, you know, change it for a certain company initiative? Or is this just going to sit stale for another year? So for us, whenever they come with that, we always kind of engage a bigger question. Okay, what else are you doing for the employees? And then we can design, you know, tools and facilities to further that mission. So I think that's something to take away. Yeah.
Perfect note to end on, and completely echo that sort of perspective that, you know, it doesn't really matter how you design that vehicle, that vessel to deliver the workplace culture through, because at the end of the day, and Jessica mentioned this too, you know, if you would build a beautiful, you know, cinema in the office, but you never play a movie, you know, there's not much use to it. And all these spaces and places that you're creating, they have to be activated. There has to be something that happens there. Otherwise, again, you know, with this sort of idea of hedonic adaptation, you create something that looks super impressive on day one, and then you've come there for 20, 30 days, and it's like, oh, that's just our office, you know, there's nothing interesting there anymore. So we have to sort of combat that, which is, you know, what we talked about, right? Why we're like changing up the decor every 3 to 4 weeks. There's always a new theme. There's new photo booths, new parties, all that. Yes. It's going to be cool, the future of work, but it's going to be a lot of work. But anywho, that's why the four of us are here. So no problem. So huge thank you to all the experts today for joining. Tuan, thank you for joining. Jessica, thank you for joining. James, thank you for joining, and also for DJing before the session started. For everyone on the call, we have another session coming up in 2 weeks where we're specifically going to dive into the people and culture side. We will be joined by Sakshi, who is the Chief People Officer for Tiki, Vietnam's largest e-commerce company. Minh Yang will be returning. She's been on a few panels before, who is the culture and people partner at Mekong Capital, who is behind a lot of the very famous new Vietnamese companies, recently invested into Maru, great chocolate. Chris Chan is joining, who helped us set up this webinar series. So we have a lot to look forward to. And then we also have from AIA, An Nguyen, who is the Associate Director of Organizational Development and Talent Management. So really great session coming up. In the recap email that you will receive tomorrow, there will be a link to sign up. Otherwise, you can also find it on our website, dreamplex.co/events. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you to the panelists, and have a great future of work today.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.